Good afternoon, everybody. We are just about to get started here. I know you were all in the waiting room and you're all kind of filing in. I'm watching the numbers tick up, and as soon as it looks like everybody that was in the waiting room is here in this room, we will kick it off. And we are talking here in about 10 seconds. So thank you all for joining us. Great. Cool. All right, we're going to get started. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Alameda County Community Food Bank's third annual State of Hunger conversation. I can't believe it's already our third. Thank you all for joining us. This is actually our third virtual town hall as well of 2024. This is a series that we started during the pandemic as a way to keep everybody engaged with us virtually. And it turns out that there's been a really great reaction to these. So we've continued to do this and turned it into more of a series that we're doing every year now. And it's a really great way for us to keep you informed about all the key parts about our mission, as well as the ways that you can support us. So thank you for being here. Just so you know, as I'm saying this, this again is our third for this calendar year. Our virtual town hall in April was about our sustainability and food recovery efforts. We did that in conjunction with Earth Day. And then just this September, we did another town hall about the election, which we focused on the ballot initiatives that we endorsed for this last election, which we will actually get into it a little bit. If you're interested, those town halls do live on our YouTube page, so you can always go and find those, and we'll also be sending them out post-event. With the holidays being such a critical time of year for our efforts, today's town hall will actually be a broader overview of the state of affairs in our community. So we're going to give you kind of a survey of a couple things that we've been up to and the things that are impacting us. I should note also, we do typically do the State of Hunger earlier in November. We usually do it right at the kind of the kickoff of the holiday season. But this year we thought it was important to wait a couple of weeks because of a particular election. Again, we'll be talking about that, but we have been getting a lot of questions about what that means. We'll be doing that. As an organization, a nonprofit organization, you may notice the logo on your screen. Community is in bold, and we are a community-based organization. So we really appreciate that each and every one of you are here, and you all play an important role in our mission. We know that you have a vested stake in this work. So our goal today is really to make sure you come away with a better idea of what is happening in our community, and most importantly, the way that you can start. So you can help us. So my name is Michael Altfest, as it says there. I'm the Community Engagement and Marketing Director here at the Food Bank. I will be moderating this discussion. Just a couple pieces of housekeeping. This is being recorded, so a link will be sent out afterwards to anybody who registered. It will be back on the YouTube page, and then we do plan on sending it via our e-newsletter that'll go out in December. Our last one just went out. And then also, if you have any questions for our panelists today, there is a Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom screen. If you don't see it immediately, there's also a more button with the 3. So the Q&A button should either be there or it should be visible for you. So please put your questions in that. We do have people moderating the Q&A. Some questions they may be able to just respond to in real time via the chat back to you. Otherwise, we will make sure that they get to the panelists. So speaking of those panelists, I'd like to introduce you to this very esteemed group that's joining us today. I did a little math, and collectively this team that we have here has more than 60 years of food banking experience. And I should note that in a couple months here, the Food Bank will be celebrating just our 40th anniversary. So collectively, this group here is even older in terms of food banking work than our food bank is. So joining us today, and this will just be kind of a brief introduction. We'll bring them all in kind of individually here. We do have Liz Gomez, who's the Food Bank's Chief Impact Officer. Liz oversees a big chunk of the food bank, our operations, our client services, in our programs. Liz has been with us for, I believe, 28 years, if my math is correct. Also joining us is Allison Pratt, our Chief of Strategy and Partnerships. Allison oversees our big strategy work, as well as our policy and partnerships, our advocacy work. She's going to be talking a little bit about the election. And then as well as Regi Young, our food bank's executive director. Regi has been at the food bank for 3 years now, but he has 11 years before that at the Houston Food Bank, from where he joined us from. And I believe I forgot to say that Allison also recently celebrated her 20th anniversary at the food bank. Again, my name is Michael Altfest. I'm Director of Community Engagement and Marketing. I have only been here for 13 and a half years, making me the baby of this group. So all that said, we're going to jump right in. Liz, I see you on my screen, which is great because my first questions are pretty much for you here. You ready to dive in and start talking about some food banking stuff?
Do this, Mike. Thank you for
Cool.
having me and for looking forward to engaging with everyone in this conversation. Very important topic.
Awesome. Well, welcome. Thank you for joining us. You have quite literally a career-long tenure in client services. You oversee our programs and operations. So I'm going to hit you with the big question here. What or how would you characterize the state of hunger in Alameda County?
That is a big question, Mike. And unfortunately, so is the food insecurity in our county. Hunger remains steady and is still high here in our community. So, while things in the last year may not have been getting worse, they certainly haven't been getting any better. And this is also despite all the recovery efforts that we've had as a community and nation. Based on food bank data, we still estimate that we are providing food to 1 in 4 of us in Alameda County who are experiencing some level of food insecurity. This is happening in our own homes, to our neighbors, and it impacts children, adults, and seniors. So unfortunately, hunger does not discriminate. So let's take a look at this chart here. I want to go over some indicators. You'll see here on this chart, this is California food insecurity data ending as of September of 2024, so just a few months ago. When we take a look at this trend line, you'll see here that early in the pandemic, April 2020, food insecurity was at 21% statewide. Then shifting over to the right, in July of 2021, when those government interventions kicked in, food insecurity was at the bottom or lowest. That means that less people were experiencing hunger. Those interventions, Mike, as you may recall, included the child tax credit for families, pandemic EBT for school-aged children, and the increase in CalFresh benefits for recipients, also known as the emergency allotment. Those were extra dollars that families were receiving each month and could use them to buy food. Then we can see in October of 2022, food insecurity rose to its peak again, impacting more than 3 million households. So we can see here that when that government intervention goes away, the negative impact was seen and felt immediately with the loss of financial support. It definitely has a grim impact on families and individuals. And this basically results in more people experiencing hunger. And now moving forward to the far right, today, you can see that statewide, things are more or less near the peak. So unfortunately, hunger remains steady and at high levels. It's also important to note that, the disparity when it comes to households with children, you'll see here the gray line here shows the, food insecurity among households with children. And as you can see, while the trend line is about the same, the numbers are much higher. And, as you know, children do make up the largest group and most food banks help. Now, moving on to this next chart. So here we can see local county-wide data. You'll see here that 15% of families live at less than 200% of the federal poverty level. So this is showing 2018 through 2022 data, which is the most recent data that we have available. And while we're looking at the 200% of the federal poverty level, these are the same income guidelines that can qualify a household for CalFresh benefits. So you'll see here the darker shaded areas are those communities in which there are higher rates of food insecurity in our county. I know the map is tiny, but closer to San Leandro, there is Ashland, community that is experiencing 32% of food insecurity. Oakland, not far behind and still high at 25%. We also have San Leandro and Hayward at 17%. So, we can see that food insecurity exists in just about every corner of our county. We can also see higher concentrations of economic hardship that makes it hard for people to meet basic needs, including food. And we know that unfortunately, food is what often people sacrifice the most. We know people are forced to choose between rent over food or medicine versus food. So food insecurity remains high and steady, Mike.
Yeah, I've always found maps like this to be quite telling. I know a lot of people get surprised as they start to see it, just how pervasive food insecurity and hunger, and in this case, what we're looking at is actually poverty numbers. Obviously, those are strongly related. How it's basically everywhere throughout the county. And, when you start to look at those lighter numbers, you realize, oh, those are the places where there aren't people. So, anywhere we're starting to see concentrations of population, we're starting to see these numbers tick up. I kind of want to dig into sort of where you were going with this as well. These numbers are pretty stark, and we're starting to see, obviously the distribution numbers going up and those sorts of things. We have, over the last couple of years, pretty much post-pandemic, largely recovered. I think that is starting to become a little bit more of an objective statement here. We've seen pretty strong employment numbers locally, nationwide. Inflation is back in check, it's down. So we have a strong economy. So why is hunger still so profound here in particular? What is behind these numbers?
Yeah, there's definitely a lot to unpack there, Mike. I know we don't have a lot of time, but let me know.
How about you give us three, maybe your top three. And actually, I do want to flag, because we did have a question from Catherine who wrote in, who wanted to know also if there's been any changes in need, particularly around the holidays. So that might be something that you could kind of build into where you might see some of these big reasons coming in.
Sure. Yeah. Well, thank you, Catherine, for your question. A very important one. Mike, you mentioned earlier that I've been at the food bank for 28 years. I cannot remember a single year where the request for food assistance decreased during the holidays. There is definitely a spike in food assistance requests, particularly in November and December. Large part, right, being that utility costs go up. And also, winter break for school-age children. We know that during the summer months and winter breaks, when children are at home, we do have more parents contacting us for assistance with food support. So most definitely a spike during the holidays, but frankly, it's continuing throughout the year. And as you know, the food bank operates an emergency food helpline. We have staff that take hundreds of calls each week from people who reach out to us for help with food. And, there is one common thread behind the reason for those calls. And one is the cost of living. While here in the Bay Area, consumer prices suggest that inflation in the region is starting to ease up a bit, that's only telling part of the story. I read a report last week released by the Bureau of Labor Statistics, where they report that consumer prices rose relatively a modest 2.4% in the Bay Area, yet utility prices rose 11.2% from just a year ago. The food that we all consume at home is up 0.7%. Meat, poultry, fish, eggs, up 1%. Fruit and vegetables up 3.2%, and on and on. So, but, bottom line is this impacts and it's felt by many of us. There's also racial disparities. Alameda County has a population of more than 1.7 million people, and we are a very diverse community. So while anyone can be impacted by hunger, the fact is that in Alameda County, 7 in 10 people live in poverty. And, people of color are also disproportionately impacted, not only by hunger, but all the intersectional and root causes that perpetuate poverty. And, last but not least, government intervention. I kind of alluded to this earlier when I showed the California data. But government intervention, or lack thereof in this case, this one is clearly visible. Our food bank is a nonprofit that has been doing this work for nearly 40 years. And we do a really great job to make sure that people don't go hungry. But this is a tall order, and it's a tall order for greater than, for any one community-based organization can manage. I mentioned earlier about the interventions like child tax credit and pandemic EBT. Those interventions drove people out of poverty, and food insecurity was at historic lows. And mind you, this was in the middle of a worldwide pandemic. So, there's undisputable evidence that it works. So to put it mildly, hunger is a policy choice, and many of our policymakers are choosing it.
Yeah, thank you for actually making that last point. And I want to put a pin in that because we are going to talk about policies in a moment. I'm going to ask you another question. Just a quick point of clarification on something you just said. I just want to make sure for the audience here. It's 7 in 10 people in poverty, I believe, in our community are people of color, right? Yeah, so that is, the racial disparities here are quite stark, and that says a lot, particularly in a place that is so diverse as this. So, in your work and in our work here, there's inherently two sides to this coin. We've got the need, which you just addressed, and there's the response. So you overseeing all of our programmatic and operational work, sort of, I'd love to hear a little bit about what you and your teams have been up to address this need in the last year.
Sure, and I think we have a chart to go along with this. So to start, during our last fiscal year, which ended June 30th, Alameda County Community Food Bank distributed the most food we've ever provided in our 40-year history. The food distributed was just a bit shy of 60 million pounds, which equates to 50 million meals to Alameda County residents. That's huge. But by comparison, the fiscal year that ended just during the first 4 months of the pandemic was about 33 million meals. So all that to say that we're roughly 50% higher than that now, which unfortunately is more or less our new normal. And then looking at calendar year 2024, so January through to date, we're looking at distributing more than 49 million meals. That's a slight decrease, but again, in the big picture of it all, it's still high and steady. And of course, we don't do this alone. Food distribution happens in partnership with our amazing agency network that covers just about every corner of our county. So in this next slide, I'll show you a little bit about what this looks like. Currently, we have 363 active partners. 216 of them have an emergency food distribution that is open to anyone who needs help with food. We also partner with 42 schools and every college in Alameda County. We want to make sure that children and young adults have access to food at a place they regularly attend. So from this map, Mike, you can see these green dots indicate where our network partners are located. And our network expands, from Albany to Livermore to Newark, with higher concentrations in some of our more food insecure cities, including Oakland, San Leandro, and Hayward. And Mike, the need for food, however, is far greater than we as an organization and network can fulfill. Our food budget has decreased as donations and revenue post-pandemic have too. So that is significantly impacting us. Yet our team is working hard to source quality and nutritious food. But as we are also experiencing higher food prices at the grocery store, so do food banks when it comes to food purchasing. So to quantify this, we are currently spending $1.3 million each month to purchase food for our community. And, next slide, please. And finally, it's also important to note that our efforts go beyond the core of food distribution. We also work to ensure that people have enough food to extend beyond what we distribute through our network partners. So for example, we have the state's largest CalFresh outreach department. Our team of 16 provide one-on-one application assistance to families and individuals, and work with Alameda County Social Services to ensure that eligible households receive those CalFresh benefits as soon as possible. Since this past January, so 2024, our team has provided one-on-one assistance to more than 3,000 households in applying for the CalFresh program. This effort alone has resulted in more than 4.2 million meals to these Alameda County households. And what's really great, as you may know, CalFresh dollars have a positive ripple effect because CalFresh recipients spend their benefit dollars here locally, right? So these 3,000 newly enrolled families in CalFresh have also brought in more than 26 million into our local economy. This is not only benefiting their families, but also retail stores, local farmers, and beyond. So, all in all, CalFresh is a win-win for all. I also want to send a big shout out to Alameda County Social Services Agency for helping to support our CalFresh outreach program for over a decade now. We certainly could not do it without them.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Liz. Appreciate this overview and really appreciate the work that your team is doing. You're a very broad team here. I'm sitting here, you mentioned the funding decline, everything. We'll talk about that a little bit. And just it's a good reminder, we are a nonprofit, and you and your team are between the operational part of it and this work here. We're talking 54 plus million meals worth of food that we're helping provide the community. So kudos to you all for that work. So thank you. We're gonna move on real quick here. Just a reminder about the Q&A button. If you do have questions, please do put those in there. Allison, I'd like to bring you in next, if that's cool. Welcome back to our State of Hunger town halls.
Thank you.
A big part of your work for your tenure here at the food bank has been about overseeing our policy change and advocacy efforts. And when it's come to that work, and I've been here for a long time, obviously, but it's historically about ensuring people have food for today, but increasingly we're focusing more and more on leveraging our influence to address the root causes and that are getting in the way of food security in the first place. So I'd like to kind of zoom in on a couple of areas with you and kind of start where we've been focused on and hear from you about the progress made in the last year, really just at that core advocacy level. I know you got a strong advocacy team who's working on a number of priorities over the course of the year. So kind of start there and see sort of what we've been up to this year.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Mike. Great to be here. And let's jump right into policy land. So first, I want to underscore that it is super important that Alameda County Community Food Bank is working on policy issues beyond the nutrition safety net. And this is because this is how we do address those root causes of hunger. As Liz mentioned, it's things like the incredibly high cost of living here in Alameda County that are the true drivers of food insecurity. This is an economic issue. It's an issue of access and an issue of equity. So our team here at the food bank, we advocate for policies across all levels of government to achieve our goals. And in terms of the progress we made this year, I believe that was your question, Mike, it was a pretty tough year, a little bit of a mixed bag. So at the federal level, our main priority was to pass a farm bill that would protect and strengthen SNAP. Liz just talked a lot about the incredible impact of CalFresh, which is what we call SNAP here in California. and also to increase USDA commodities for food banks. So these programs truly are our first line defense against hunger, and we know that they work. Unfortunately, as we've seen before, it can be kind of difficult to get really big things done in Washington, D.C. during an election year. So the Farm Bill did actually expire on September 30th, but the programs that are funded within the Farm Bill, including SNAP, are continued through the end of the year. And we're going to talk a little bit later about what might be next for the Farm Bill. This was also a tough year in Sacramento for a number of reasons, but most importantly, whenever the state faces a really large budget deficit like we did this year, it can be really difficult to secure new health and human services investments. So many of the priorities that we've been working towards over the last couple of years stalled during budget negotiations, and not so much due to a lack of political will, but more for a lack of financial resources at the state level. So this includes the Food for All campaign, which is a statewide effort to include all income eligible Californians in food assistance benefits, regardless of immigration status. We were, however, able to protect and preserve the state's ongoing investment in universal school meals, which is one of those pandemic supports that Liz mentioned. This continues to be a huge win for the state. This is something that we worked really hard on, again, coming out of the pandemic, and we'll continue to champion this really visionary program for the state of California. One bill that did pass in Sacramento this year is Senate Bill 1254, and this one helps to address barriers to reentry. So the law actually requires the State Department of Social Services to partner with the Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation and county jails to enroll eligible CalFresh applicants before they re-enter into the community, so that when they do re-enter, they're able to put food on the table, which is just such a critical re-entry support. So we are hearing that the state is anticipating a better financial outlook in the year ahead. So that's great, again, for some of those multi-year priorities. But the other dynamic, of course, in play here is the potential need for California to offset cuts that we might see at the federal level. So we do have one of the most robust advocacy and community organizing teams in food banking. You know, Mike, as you stated up front, we do this work in coalition, and we work with community to really uplift community voice, to advocate on their own behalf. Nothing that we've accomplished has been done solely on our own. But, you know, rather it's because there's a large group of, you know, concerned constituents and citizens that are coming together.
Cool. Thank you. I'm looking at this photo, and it's actually it's you know, kind of, it's a nice segue onto the second question that I want to ask you. Really is kind of focusing in on civic engagement here. Is, you know, we work in coalition. We bring in grassroots advocates. It's not just your team, although your team is incredible. It's an honor to work with them every day. I'm just going to throw it out there. Many of us, if not all of us, just participated in a rather big election a couple of weeks ago. There's been a lot of analysis. I know a lot of analysis is underway about, you know, the results and what it does all mean. And we've had more than a few attendees. I know Catherine, who asked the other question, Harlan, a couple others, has specifically asked, how are the changes in Washington going to affect our work? I know there's a really big question for you, and you probably want to drill in more than Washington, but I'm just going to kind of let it go there. Tell us about the election, Allison. What's it going to mean for us?
Yeah. All right, Mike. I had my coffee this morning, so I'm prepared to talk fast. And I also want to start with our disclaimer, right? ACCFB, we are a nonprofit organization, and as such, we do not endorse or oppose political parties or candidates for office. We do, however, care very deeply about our democratic process, and we, as an organization, seek to engage voters in several ways. So just a little bit about that work. We have data actually that shows us that the census districts in Alameda County with the lowest voter participation often have the highest level of food insecurity. And we have to ask ourselves, how might this look different if everyone's voice were heard? So we know that we still have work to do around voter engagement. We actually saw voter participation in Alameda County dip just a little bit this election compared to the last presidential. But this is work that's important to the food bank, and we're going to keep on it. So presidential elections, right, are usually quite high stakes, very high profile. And in particular, we know that there's a lot of uncertainty in the wake of this election. And so regardless of the administration, the food bank remains committed to our priorities and again, holding all levels of government accountable to ending hunger. So our top priority at the federal level is still going to be landing this ongoing farm bill negotiation. The farm bill is so much more than funding for just farming. So as I mentioned earlier, it includes two of our largest anti-hunger programs, including SNAP. Just to give a sense of the scale and impact of SNAP here, in 2022, SNAP helped more than 40 million Americans put food on the table. For every meal that a food bank provided across the country, SNAP provided 9. So this is an incredibly important program. We did just hear this week that Senator Stabenow has released bill text for a lame duck farm bill. This indicates that Congress might be trying to get some movement going, but the much more likely scenario is that there would be an extension of the year-end funding package, which would push Farm Bill reauthorization into next year. And we're already starting to hear various things out of Congress about what this could mean for SNAP. Namely, we're hearing proposed cuts to the program, which would mean needing to limit eligibility or having to cut benefit levels. And this would really be especially devastating in Alameda County. Again, Liz talking about the high cost of living. Benefits already don't stretch as far here. We're also hearing talk of restricting food choice or restricting what people can buy with their benefits. This is a proposal that we've heard before. This would introduce stigma, perceived barriers to access. It would certainly have a detrimental effect to the anti-hunger program that we've seen be so effective. And finally, we're hearing proposals around, and again, not new, potentially block granting the program to states or otherwise putting a spending cap on SNAP, which would undercut like the very important ability of this program to respond during times of high need, like high unemployment. Because a spending cap, of course, you would limit the number of people who can benefit from the program. So we're hearing new things every day. I was joking with Mike this morning, like it keeps changing, right? So we're hearing new things every day. So please stay tuned. And again, no matter when the Farm Bill moves, ACCFB's priority is going to be to protect and strengthen SNAP, TFAP, and other nutrition programs. So we're also sorting through election results at the local level. I see you've got the federal folks up there on the screen. But we're seeing a fair amount of change at the local level as well. We saw the departure of two highly impactful anti-hunger lawmakers, Barbara Lee and Nancy Skinner, Congresswoman Barbara Lee and State Senator Nancy Skinner. We will certainly miss them in their roles, and we look forward to building relationships with their replacements who you see up here. You see one, Jesse Arreguin in the state Senate and Latifah Simon in Congress. At the state level, we saw that all of our incumbent assembly members were reelected. In terms of state senators, we have 3 people who are new to their seats, but not new to elected office. Very interesting. We still have one race in Alameda County, maybe more, but one that I've been closely tracking that is still too close to call, and that is the race for our new County Board of Supervisors member. We have Oakland City Council President Nikki Fortunato Bass, who I believe is currently leading Emeryville City Council member John Bowders by like a little more than 100 votes. So we're still waiting for the call on this one. And just a note about that county level race, for those of us working in the health and human services space, the county has such a huge impact here. They basically are the social safety net implementers and providers for our community. They oversee very large budgets. So our local work is a super high priority for us, and we look forward to working with whoever wins this seat. This is also an interesting one to watch because there's implications for the city of Oakland, and with the recall of Mayor Tao, The current city council president would assume that seat on an interim basis, but this could, of course, be impacted if Nikki Fortunato Bass is elected to the County Board of Supervisors. So a lot that we're still kind of watching and sorting through at the local level. So I've talked a lot about people, but do quickly want to mention the state propositions. And so Mike mentioned our amazing policy and partnerships team. So shout out to Aliza and the team. We put together just an incredibly thoughtful voter guide, and we did endorse 5 ballot propositions this year. In terms of how those fared.
And I actually want to just interject, Allison, because you mentioned things are changing rapidly, and those question marks are probably no longer relevant. I think we have a call on that. And in fact, just given the time and everything, because we did do the virtual town hall on this or something like that, I know kind of the housing stuff and everything was sort of the big part that you wanted to address. So
So just want to mention, we saw a couple of our housing priorities fail, but housing is definitely going to be a significant priority for the policy and partnerships team going forward. Again, as Liz mentioned, we continue to hear from people that the main thing standing in the way of being able to pay bills and put food on the table is really the high cost of housing. The last thing that I'll mention is another priority area for us in the year ahead is going to be protecting immigrant rights, and in particular, immigrant access to the safety net. And I'll stop there, Mike.
Great, thank you. And if I'm not mistaken, because I was kind of smiling on it, but maybe not the best news, that those question marks are an X, right? Prop 32.
Yes. Sorry, the Prop 32 was called last night. It did not pass.
Okay, great. Yeah. That is unfortunate. We obviously know more money in the pockets of our community means less hunger. So, but I know you and your team very well, and I know this state coalition, and these are not things that we're going to let up on. So, keep up that good fight and everything. So, I'm going to move on here. Regi, how you doing?
Mike, I'm doing well, and thank you for having me. Great to be in community with everybody here today. As Allison has indicated, it's been an interesting year, and especially an interesting last few weeks. And so I really appreciate having the opportunity to talk about the need, the response, as well as the policy implications, as well as having the opportunity to kind of share how our organization is moving towards our new mission, which is to partner with our community to end hunger and its root causes.
You just scooped me because I was going to ask you a question about that, but do you mind? I had 2 questions for you. One's a little bit micro, and then the big macro one, which you're just getting to. And I realized micro may not be the best way to kind of get at this first question, because we are talking about literally 53 acres of land here. For those of you who did not hear this yet, we recently this summer entered into an exciting new partnership. In fact, CBS 5 yesterday, if you were watching at 6 o'clock in the morning, there was a nice feature on this. We took a huge step. Maybe people might even think it's a little unusual in terms of what we're doing, but we are making a big investment in Dig Deep Farms, which I know a lot of people in the county are really familiar with their work, and now they are more than our partners. They're kind of part of the food bank now. So I wanted to kind of start there and give you the opportunity to kind of talk a little bit more in depth about this partnership and what was behind it. Why are we now working and doing this work with Dig Deep Farms?
Yeah, I appreciate the question, Mike. And just to start off, let me just ground people in who Dig Deep Farm actually is. And so Dig Deep Farms is actually a 53-acre farm at Ardenwood Park in Fremont, led by people of color. They actually apply organic and regeneratively growing practices at the farm, and they also train farmers on site at the farm. Now, one of the things people may know Dig Deep Farms have been a part of over the years has been Alameda County's Food is Medicine Recipe for Health program. And so Dig Deep Farms, a lot of their produce over the years has gone to supporting essentially the county's Recipe for Health program, which provides food to people who have a chronic condition, as well as struggles with food insecurity. Now, to your question, Mike, I will say that on the surface, it may seem like it is an unusual step for us. However, I would have to mention that there are several food banks within the Feed America network that either operate a farm or partner with farms as a means of sourcing fresh produce. Now, interesting enough, from our organization's perspective, this move is actually right in line with some of the other efforts that we have been doing, including our procurement strategy. So many of you may already know that about 100% of our purchased produce comes from BIPOC farmers. And this is actually an initiative that we implemented about 2.5 years ago to really lean into the equity aspects of our work and saying that we want to invest in our local food system. We want to invest in Black, Indigenous, and people of color farmers. And a lot of this work is right in line with that. And so when I think about this effort, I really look at it as an extension of what we've already been doing, but in support of another organization in their own development. Now, the reality is that Dignity Farms is a great organization that's having a positive impact on their community and really benefits the entirety of our local food system as a whole. Now, why would we do this? We recognize that we are not farmers, but we do know how to run a nonprofit, right? And so having access to beautiful, culturally relevant food items through Dignity Farms is beneficial to our partner network, including our own medically tailored grocery program that we offer at the food bank. But ultimately, what we're trying to do with this partnerships is really incubate Dignity Farms to grow on and be on their own and continue having a big impact on the local food system. Now, the commitment that we've made is that we're going to partner with them for 2 to 3 years as their fiscal sponsor and really support their overall development and leveraging the resources that we have as an organization, the knowledge that we have in operating a nonprofit in support of the work that they're doing. Now, ultimately, what we're trying to accomplish is we want Dignity Farms to be successful because we see their success as our success, because we see a strong local sustainable food system as benefiting the people that we serve through our work and ultimately Alameda County as a whole. And so the way that we're kind of thinking about this is that us and Dignity Farms and through partnership is really trying to provide a food justice approach to address some of the barriers that are impeding Black and brown farmers from being successful in our county. And that's something that we want to work on with them together.
Thank you. And then, lights just went off in the room that I'm in. We'll figure that out. There we go. Thank you, Regi, for that. And I just did want to flag for all the attendees. Our colleague Yarrow just put in the link to that news segment that literally just ran yesterday. So really encourage you to check that out. It features one of the co-directors, Troy. They're just really wonderful people. And I know Regi, I heard from you, this was the original kind of intro to the farm. It was like, is this something we were going to do? And then you met Troy and Sasha and realized like, oh, we got to do this. So they're really incredible people. So we really encourage everybody to watch that. You just used 2 words there that segue nicely into my second question. You said food justice, and it may have come up before, but I want to ask through that lens of food justice, ask this next big question here, because there's another big giant thing that we have been working on. A lot of our work happens out in the community. A lot of people see a lot of the work that we're doing, and you can see the immediate impact. But like an organization, like any organization, we're doing a lot of planning in the background. And I think this might be the first time we've gone out widely, publicly, said anything about this, but congratulations, y'all. We've got a new strategic plan, which we're going to be implementing here this coming year. So you said food justice, and I know just from working in here, food justice is kind of like the headline punchline of this plan. Like that is going to be sort of the focus of our next 5 years. So would love for you to kind of briefly just walk us through, what does this mean? Are we becoming a brand new organization? Are we going to stop working on the work that Allison and Liz have been doing and just become a whole new thing? Like, what is it going to mean for us to move and focus more on food justice?
Yeah, so to the last part of your question of whether we're going to be moving away from Liz and Allison's work, that's absolutely not. In fact, I would say that this plan will really allow for us to lean into that work and do it more intentionally with the food justice frame. And so, but before I delve into that a little bit more, I know that we had a quiz that we wanted to offer to the group. And so Could we do that now?
You said the magic words. I love doing a little poll.
Okay.
So, do you want me to read it?
Yeah, please.
All right, this is the pop quiz for everybody. We just want to kind of gauge. So, which of these organizations that should have showed up on your screen is often credited with starting modern day hunger relief efforts? And we're going to give you a couple seconds here. We're seeing some questions come in. Ooh, some people think it's us. Some people think St. Vincent de Paul. Feeding America's coming up here. Ooh.
As soon as you say it's us, people are like,
give you we'll go 10 more seconds to put in the answers here. All right, I see kind of an even distribution of St. Vincent de Paul, Feeding America, which we all know was America's Second Harvest before they changed their name, and Alameda County Community Food Bank. We're going to end that poll. And Reggie, what was the answer to that question?
yeah, so this is very interesting kind of seeing the results. And I would say that most times when we talk about this, most people will select St. Mary's Food Bank or Feeding America because they were actually, St. Mary's Food Bank was actually the first, recognized as the first food bank in the network. And actually the person, John Van Hagel, who founded St. Mary's Food Bank, also founded Feeding America a few years later, right? So they typically get the credit for this. But if you selected E, none of the above, you are absolutely correct. And because the reality is that the actual answer is the Black Panther Party, right? We're here, I'm here in Oakland. I'm sitting in Oakland. And if you recall, the Black Panther Party was formed in 1966 here in Oakland, California. They were the ones that originally came out with the 10-point program where they demanded the right to food. A couple of years later, they started the first free breakfast program for school children, right? And so a lot of the efforts that were taken after that, so when you think about food banks, hunger relief organizations, and so forth, a lot of the organized hunger relief efforts actually were founded based upon some of the concepts and principles that the Black Panther Party established way back in the 60s, right? Because even St. Mary's Food Bank was started in the 70s. And if you went to St. Mary's Food Bank right now and did a tour, they would even actually say in their presentation that a lot of the elements of what they do and the elements of what food banks do traces its essence back to the Black Panther Party. Now, when people think about the Black Panther Party, they're thinking about them as a social justice organization. They recognize that they did hunger work, but they look at them as a social justice organization. The reality is that the Black Panther Party knows what we know, right? Is that food insecurity is a justice issue that can only be addressed from a justice framework. And so the work that we're doing at Alameda County Community Food Bank is evolving back towards its roots to thinking about this work from a justice lens.
Super fascinating. So it's not really an evolution. We're actually, this is really much just baked into what food banking is. So I know we're gonna be rolling out this new strat plan, a ton after, pretty much after the holidays. So the community is gonna get a lot of exposure to this, learn more about it. If you might just kind of with this alone, because I know there's sort of kind of three main components to it, if you could kind of just briefly give our attendees a little preview of what they're going to be hearing a lot of next year.
Yeah, I'll do it very brief because I know we're running out of time. So the way that you should look at this, and so these are basically our three pillars: strengthen the core, push the bounds, and reimagine and recreating the system. And so when we talk about strengthen the core, these are the elements of the food-based work that you typically know, right? The food distributions, program development, working with our partner network, ensuring that people have food today. When I say we're going to continue that work, not only we're going to continue that work, but we feel like we have to strengthen that work because we see that as the means of really giving us the opportunity to be able to do the other things like push the bounds and reimagine and recreating the system. A lot of the credibility we have is around the fact that we do good work in collaboration with our partner network in making sure that people have the right food at the right place at the right time. And so we have to get stronger in that. We need to be able to get better feedback from our community to know exactly the right items that is needed. We need to have better responses to ensure that we're getting product on time to the places that need it the most. We want to make the way that we deliver our service delivery as efficient as possible, and we have to be able to do that in support of our community. Now, the Alameda County Community Food Bank has always been known as a food bank that actually pushes the bounds. It's actually one of the reasons why I wanted to come to ACCFB. We were the first food bank in the country to establish a nutrition policy. We're the first food bank right now to actually get reimbursed for our medically tailored grocery program, which supports people with food insecurity as well as a chronic condition. These are the areas in which are at the intersection of food and health, food and housing, food and education. All of these root causes, the things that lead to a person becoming food insecure. And so when we talk about pushing the bounds, we want to continue to push in spaces, develop programming in conjunction with other organizations and other institutions that can have a big impact on meeting the needs of community members that may not be the traditional way that we think about food banking. Now, to take that a step further, when we talk about reimagining and recreating the system, we recognize that in order to end hunger and food insecurity in our community, you have to address it at its root causes. And there's a system that's set up that creates the conditions for food insecurity to actually exist. And so when we talk about the work that we're doing with Dig Deep Farms and really trying to transform what the local food system looks like, those are the spaces in which we feel like we can establish partnerships with organizations who come from a justice frame in a lot of different areas to really think about how can we leverage our collective resources as individual organizations, as a community, as a collective, to really make long-term big impacts in reimagining what the food system, what the local system looks like, so that can actually be set up so that people can be sustained, nourished for long-term capabilities. And so a lot of this work from my perspective is really how do we be in lockstep with our community to strengthen the work that we're currently doing, to push the bounds in what we could do, and then reimagine the conditions that lead to why food insecurity even exists in our communities right now. Now, I will have to say that we took a really new approach to coming up with this work. We took an approach called liberatory design. And so I did have to give a shout out to our director of strategy, Susie Wise, who led us through this process along with her colleague, Morgan, which was an incredible, inclusive process. And so I just want to give them a big shout out for getting us to this point.
Awesome. Thank you, Reggie. And actually, Susie was largely involved in the farm as well. So
Absolutely. Heavily involved.
Yeah. Well, cool. And thank you for that overview. And I know kind of alluding to it, to get a little wonky as a food bank, we work on a fiscal year. This will actually officially roll out July 1st of 2025. But I know basically these next 6 to 7 months leading up to that is a big part of us working towards that implementing. And it is going to be something we're going to be putting out a lot more early next year, along with our 40th anniversary. I can't believe it. So we're getting close to time here, and if anybody does want to hang out a little bit, we might have a couple questions. I did want to ask you all just one little kind of quick question, so you can kind of be brief in your answers here. But I want you to reach into your desk drawers and pull out your imaginary or metaphorical crystal balls. We do this every year, just like that crystal ball. Look at that. So we do this. You know, we've been doing this. This is our 3rd year. We'll be doing it next year. So we're going to be sitting here beginning of November next year, having a similar discussion, or maybe not a similar discussion, but it will be talking about our state of hunger. I want you to look into that crystal ball and just kind of let us know what you think, kind of what we might be talking about. What are some themes that you think we might be talking about? I'll just go in the same order. Liz, anything coming to mind what you think we might be talking about this time next year?
Yeah, this is a question, Mike, that makes me a little bit nervous. From our experience back in 2016, some immediate impacts that we saw from the community were actually more on the negative side, right? Cuts to the SNAP program that had a significant impact on our community, as well as the chilling ripple effect of the public charge, right? There's a lot of people that have fear about what programs are safe or not to use. So, those are significant. And we also saw fewer people at the food lines, and not for the right reasons, but for misinformation and fear of, frankly, like immigration. And so there's definitely a lot to worry about. But remain optimistic and hope that this time it's not as detrimental as it was last time.
Thank you. Allison, how about you?
Thank you for the question, Mike. When I look ahead to the next year, I think we're going to be talking a lot more about this new concept of a food justice incubator and what it means for ACCFB. And I did see the comment or the question in the Q&A around, what are the metrics for success that we're applying to the work with the farm. And I think, we're still developing those in partnership with the farmers, but broadly, the idea of the incubator is that in order to create equitable and robust food systems within Alameda County, the food bank is going to need to center other people's work and invest in those movements and organizations that go beyond the food bank, so that ultimately the measurements that we're starting to look like are an actual reduction in the food insecurity that we're seeing in the community.
It's interesting kind of how those sort of dovetails and, between what Liz said and what you said, and just sort of I think it's nicely kind of encompassing just sort of the push and pull and just the work that we do on a day-to-day basis, but you can start to see how those things are kind of bubbling up to a more systemic level too, as well. So thank you. Regi, you kind of get the last word here in terms of, crystal ball moments. Anything you think next year, early November, we'll be sitting here talking about?
Yeah, I think at the core of this strategic plan, at the core of the way that we're developing as an organization in conjunction with our community, the reality is that we're going to need to establish new partnerships that go beyond, kind of what Allison said, right? Go beyond just food distribution, but really towards how do we address the root causes of food insecurity. And so I think a year from now, we're going to be talking about new partnerships and really establish relationships that help us to move closer towards achieving our mission.
Great, thank you all. Allison, thanks for addressing that question. I know we were going to move into a Q&A here. We're at time. I am going to just ask a couple quick questions, and I think actually, Liz, the questions that had popped in might be mostly for you, and then we'll kind of just do a quick wrap up. And I'm going to actually double up this question. I know there were two separate questions, but somebody did write in asking about the impact of food insecurity on senior citizens. And then there was also another question about the steps that our food bank takes to proactively reach out to demographics in Alameda County that are at the greatest risk of food insecurity beyond those people reaching out to us for assistance. I know seniors are a big group that we serve and everything. So that's why I just kind of combine those questions for you.
Yeah, certainly, Mike. Thank you. Yeah, you're right on. More broadly, the senior community or senior citizens are definitely a large population that is served by not just by us through our home delivery program, but also through our network partners that I spoke about earlier. Many of the people that are visiting them for food assistance are people over the age of 60. So it's definitely a community that is impacted by food security in many different ways. What we're doing to reach people that may not know about food bank services or, home delivery or, SNAP or CalFresh support that our team offers, besides grassroots outreach, where we're out in the community tabling and, attending fairs to let people know that we exist. We also have a comprehensive marketing campaign that includes, social media ads, YouTube videos. We have I still call it new, it's not so new, but it's our foodnow.net website. That is a subset of accfb.org. That website is meant specifically for people that are needing to connect with the local food pantry in their neighborhood and or sign up for CalFresh. And there's also many other resources and services available on that website. But, again, we're doing what we can, and there's more that is being planned for next year in terms of how we reach our community and engage, and awareness around the food bank and what we're doing.
Cool, thank you. And then I'll do just this last question that actually somebody had written in before. Want to give you the opportunity to address it too. Charles had written in asking about our expansion of work along the 680 corridor. And I remember kind of going back to that map. I know firsthand, like we've seen that get darker in the Tri-Valley over, the last few years or so. So I think it'd be great just to sort of share at very top line some of those things that we're doing to address that growing need out there.
Yeah, absolutely. So the Tri-Valley area is definitely not one that is not impacted by food insecurity. As you mentioned, there are definitely pockets of food insecurity, particularly in areas like Livermore. In recent years, we have established partnerships with some key food distribution partners, specifically in the Tri-Valley area. We have Open Heart Food Bank that will now serve as our redistribution organization. It's kind of like food bank lingo, but what that means is basically a smaller food bank type of operation that will work to distribute food to the local community organizations in the Tri-Valley area. This will help make it easier for the agencies that are in the Tri-Valley area, so they don't have to travel to the Oakland warehouse here to pick up food, but it'll be at a location that is far closer to them. And it'll also make it easier for us at ACCFB so that we could use our transportation resources and reach other parts of the county. Open Heart Food Bank is one of our RDO partners, and also big shout out to Berkeley Food Network in the North County area that also serves as a redistribution organization.
Cool. Thank you, Liz. And actually, I was thinking there was, I know Yara shared that story about the farm. There was also another story yesterday, phenomenal story. If you can all check it out, or maybe somebody might be able to get it, about a young boy who, his name's Zion, actually, 13 years old. He's a young man who has been supporting us and one of our agencies out there, Muslim Community Center. Zion raised $20,000 for us this last Ramadan. But the story about that, it brought up a really important stat, because the Tri-Valley region is one of our fastest growing regions in terms of food distribution. And I believe it had said something about in the last year was about 500,000 pounds more went to the Tri-Valley region last year than the year before. So it is definitely an area that we are investing a lot more because the need is a lot higher and everything. So yes, there's the link. Thank you, Yara, for sharing that. I encourage everybody to watch both of those. They're both really inspiring stories. And, obviously big shout out to CBS for focusing on us and everything. So those are the questions. Just going to wrap up real quick. We want to thank everybody for being here. Again, this will be shared via a link afterwards. So if you registered, you'll get the link, and we'll be sharing it obviously through our e-news. Again, this is, we're kind of in the heart of the holiday season here. This is a time where food banks, our food bank, all food banks pretty much nationwide are getting most of our funding. It's not just a busy time of year for us programmatically. Our food bank will get about 50% of its funding during the holiday months. And actually this year we came into November significantly down from last year, about $1.8 million down in terms of revenue. So we're working as best we can to make up that gap before New Year's. If you are looking at making a donation, this is the time to do it. If you work for a company or are part of a bicycle group or a school or anything, I encourage you to do a virtual food drive, which you can find on our website. Those are always great opportunities to get kind of actively engaged in some friendly competition. We always need volunteers. We particularly need volunteers after the holidays. People want to come and volunteer now, which is great. If there's space, please do come in now. But we typically see a big drop off after the first of the year. We're getting a bunch of food drive that comes in during this time of year, and we'll be sorting it well into next year. So we definitely need that support. And then lastly, Allison talked a lot about our advocacy work. We do have a team of 6 or 7. I don't know, it's been growing and it's super strong, but most of the advocates, most of the people who are doing that work are community advocates just like you. So we have a really strong program. You can sign up for advocacy alerts. We will prompt you when it's time to reach out to the governor or your legislators, or we have a lot of advocacy events over the course of the year to help you get involved and be an effective advocate. So there's a lot of ways to get engaged. Again, we are a community-based organization. We only do this with your support, your engagement. We thank you for being here. We thank you for your support. And we look forward to hosting you again at our next town hall, to be determined, although I got a lot of ideas from what you all were talking about today. So happy holidays, everybody. We'll see you soon.